שמבוססת על תצפית מדעית, לוקחים אותנו למסע בתוך הרחם, כפי שלא ראינו מעולם. בזמן פליטת הזרע, גבר בוגר ובריא פולט כ-500 מיליון תאי זרע בנרתיק של האישה, והמסע המדהים מתחיל. מהנרתיק הם עוברים מבעד לצוואר הרחם, מעלה אל הרחם ולתוך החצוצרה. שם הביצית של האישה, שהיא התא הגדול בגוף האדם, ממתינה להם. הזרעים הראשונים שמגיעים לביצית הם החזקים והקשירים ביותר. הראשון שיחדיר את ראשו דרך קרום הביצית ינצח. כיום אחד לאחר ההפריה מתחלקת הביצית בפעם הראשונה. לאחר 4-5 ימים הכדור הזעיר שמכונה כעת בלסטוציסט כבר צמח ל100 תאים בקירוב, והוא מתחיל להתפצל לשני מערכים. לאחר 7 ימים הבלסטוציסט מגיע לקצה החצוצרה ומתיישב ברחם, מקום המקלט שלו ב9 החודשים הבאים. עוד אחד מהאיברים שנוצרים ראשונים הוא הלב. עד כה היה הלב גוש רדום של תאי שריר, אבל לאחר 22 ימים הוא מתעורר לפתע לחיים. בתוך 3 שבועות בלבד יוצר העובר את ראשיתה של מערכת העצבים ואת הלב, המסוגלים להזרים חומרים מזינים לכל גופו הזעיר. הנקודות השחורות בראשו הן ראשיתן של העיניים. יש ניצנים לאורך גופו שיצמחו להיות הידיים והרגליים. העובר גדל כבר 6 שבועות, אורכו כעת כ2.5 סנטימטרים וגודלו כגודל אגוז. לאחר שגדל במשך 8 שבועות, העובר כבר יותר דומה לאדם זעיר. בשלב הזה, לאחר 12 שבועות, נכנס העובר, התינוקת, לשליש השני, 3 החודשים האמצעיים של ההיריון. לאחר 4 חודשים, אורכה של התינוקת יגיע ל14 סנטימטרים. מערכת העצבים כבר פועלת, ורוב התנועות כבר בשליטתו של המוח. לאחר כ18 שבועות מתחילה מערכת העיכול לפעול. לתינוקת אין עדיין צורך לאכול או לשתות, אבל כפי שרואים בתמונה האמיתית הזו ב4 ממדים, היא מתחילה לבלוע את הנוזל שבו היא צפה, מי השפיר. לאחר 6 חודשי הריון, בסוף השליש השני, הכל כבר התפתח ומתפקד כפי שיתפקד כשהתינוקת תיוולד. הכל כבר נמצא שם, רק קטן ולא מפותח מספיק. בשלב הבא תצא התינוקת לאחד האתגרים הדרמטיים ביותר שלה, התפתחות החושים. בגיל 25 שבועות העיניים כה מורכבות שכבר צמחו להן ריסים. להתרחבות מעגל החושים מצטרפת עכשיו תחושת הכאב. מהשבוע ה-26 מבלים התינוקות 90% מזמנם בשינה, וכשהם ישנים, דבר לא יעיר אותם. האיבר החשוב שמתפתח אחרון הן הריאות. בשבוע ה-28 התינוקת כבר עברה כ2/3 מזמן שהותה ברחם וצוברת משקל במהירות, בעודה אותה שכבת שומן מתחת לאורה. חושיה פועלים וקליפת המוח הבשילה דייה כדי שתהיה בהכרה. במהלך 4 השבועות הבאים, מערכת העצבים שלה תהפוך למתקדמת כמו של תינוק בן יומו. היא נעשית מודעת לעולם סביבה, ובפעם הראשונה מתחיל מוחה ליצור זיכרונות. תנועת הריצוד העדינה של העין היא אולי סימן לכך שהעובר שנותר לו עוד חודש בטרם ייוולד כבר חולם.
Nathanson. I'm a physician, a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist. And I think I've had a passing experience in matters of abortion. Now, when I was a medical student in 1949, we had no such science as fetology. We were taught that the unborn child, the fetus, was something in the uterus, but it was really an article of faith as to whether or not it was a human being and whether or not that human being had any unique personal qualities. Now, for the first time, we're going to see a film made with real-time ultrasound imaging. For instance, a late abortion. This is one of the 4,000 or so a day done every day in the United States. This film was made at an abortion clinic. Now, let's turn to the actual film itself. We are now looking at a sector scan of a real-time ultrasound imaging of a 12-week unborn child. The child is orientated in this direction. You are looking now at the head of the child here, the body of the child here, and this image is the child's hand approaching its mouth. Looking a little more closely at the child, we can discern the eye, or the orbit of the eye, here, the nose of the child here, the mouth of the child here, and we can even look at the ventricle of the brain here. This is a fluid-filled space in the brain. We see the body of the child here with the ribs in silhouette and the spine of the child at the back. This rather granular area of tissue at the top of the sector appears to be the placenta or afterbirth of the child. And we can begin to see down here the thighs, the lower extremities of the child coming off the body in this manner. Now, let's move to the action. We now see the heart beating here in the child's chest. The heart is beating at a rate of approximately 140 a minute, and we can see the child moving rather serenely in the uterus. One can see it shifting position from time to time. It is still orientated in this manner, and the mouth is receiving the thumb of the child. The child again is moving quietly in its sanctuary. Now, this shadow which we are seeing down at the bottom of the screen is the suction tip. We have colored the suction tip deliberately in order for you to discern it more clearly. But the abortionist has now dilated the cervix and is now inserting this suction tip, which you can see moving back and forth across the screen. You will note that as the suction tip, which is now over here, moves toward the child will rear away from it and undergo much more violent, much more agitated movements. The child is now moving in a much more purposeful manner. Its orientation changes from time to time. It is rearing again here. Now, the suction tip has not actually touched the child, even though the child is extremely agitated and moving in a violent manner. The child has now moved back to the profile view, and the suction tip is flashing once again across the screen. The child's mouth is now open, and we will see that again on a freeze frame in a moment. But this suction tip, which you can see moving violently back and forth on the bottom of the screen, is the lethal instrument which will ultimately tear apart and destroy the child. It is only after the fluid has been broken, the sac has been disrupted, that the tip will actually come against the child. But we can see the tip moving back and forth as the abortionist seeks the child's body. Once again, we see the child's mouth wide open in a silent scream in this particular freeze frame. This is the silent scream of a child threatened imminently with extinction. Now, the heart rate has speeded up dramatically, and the child's movements are violent at this point. It does sense aggression in its sanctuary. It is moving away. One can see it moving to the left side of the uterus in an attempt, a pathetic attempt, to escape the inexorable instruments which the abortionist is using to extinguish its life. Now, the heart has again perceptibly speeded up. We can time this at approximately 200 beats per minute, and there is no question this child senses the most mortal danger imaginable. The membrane has now been punctured, and the fluid has escaped. One no longer sees that large reservoir of fluid surrounding the child. But once the fluid has been drained off, the suction tip has now been firmly clamped to the child's body, and the child is being pulled in a downward direction by the abortionist's suction tip with the negative pressure applied to it, and the body is now being torn systematically from the head of the child being in this direction here. I am now outlining the child's head. The lower extremities have already been lost, and we see the suction tip flashing from time to time in the screen as a typhoon-like series of echoes, and the child is being tugged back and forth as the suction tip has now been applied to the body, and the abortionist is exerting his traction on the child in this manner. The child's head is still discernible here. The body is no longer discernible. It has now been torn from the head. What we see now is the head itself with what is called the midline echo of the head and the spicules or fragments of bone. Now this head, which I'm outlining here, on this 12-week child is simply too large to be pulled in one piece out of the uterus, the abortionist is going to have to employ this instrument, the polyp forceps, in an attempt to grab the head. The abortionist will attempt to crush the head with this instrument in this manner and remove the head piecemeal from the uterus. The abortionist and the anesthesiologist have a secret language between them which shields them from the grisly reality of what is going on. The abortionist and the anesthesiologist together refer to the head of this child, which is now being sought, as number 1. And the anesthesiologist will inquire of the abortionist, is number 1 out yet? Are we finished? We now see intermittently the shanks or blades of this instrument appearing in the image here. The head tends to float freely in the uterus. Here are the shanks or blades of the instrument coming across here. And the head is now being locked on by this polyp forceps, and the head is being pulled down toward the cervix. Now all we see remaining are simply the shards, the broken fragments, the pieces of tissue which document that there was once a living, defenseless, tiny human being here. Of abortion in our society, let's look at some figures as to what has actually happened in the last 20 years. We have reliable figures indicating that in 1963, long before abortion became legalized by the infamous Roe v. Wade decision, there were approximately 100,000 illegal abortions done annually in the United States, and very few legal abortions. When discussing abortion, we must also understand that the unborn child is not the only victim. Women themselves are victims just as the unborn children are. Women have not been told of the true nature of the unborn child. They have not been shown the true facts of what an abortion really is. Women in increasing numbers, hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands, have had their wombs perforated, infected, destroyed. Women have been sterilized and castrated, all as a result of an operation of which they have had no true knowledge. This film, and other films which may follow like it, must be made a part of the informed consent for any woman before she submits herself to a procedure of this sort. I accuse the National Abortion Rights Action League, I accuse Planned Parenthood and all its co-conspirators in the abortion industry of a consistent conspiracy of silence, of keeping women in the dark with respect to the true nature of abortion. And I challenge all those purveyors of abortion to show this real-time videotape or one similar to it to all women before they consent to abortion.
כן כולנו רקמה אנושית אחת חיה, ואם אחד מאיתנו הולך מעימנו, משהו מת בנו, משהו ילדה, הנה בא להשפיע את צמרנו, על אף עלבוננו לומר סליחה, הנה בא להתחיל מההפלה. היא כולנו, כן כולנו